After getting tens of thousands of students their dream grade in English language, here are the 5 top mistakes that stop students from nearly getting that grade. One of the number 1 mistakes students make in English language is not pre-writing out their creative writing. You should be pre-writing out your creative writing. So this is what you should not be doing. Making it up on the spot and just writing it based on the photo. That is you depending on a lot of luck, and we don't like to leave anything down to luck and chance in the exam. But you also don't want to be taking a full creative writing story from someone else and just using it. And then you also don't want to pre-write out a piece of creative writing and not adapt it at all. So what lots of students end up doing is they see the photo, they write up a piece of creative writing, and they just do it based on luck and based on maybe what they've learned in class, or kind of just hoping for the best. Or other people will then pre-write out a whole bit of creative writing, but actually take it from another story. Don't do that. Or they might pre-write out a lovely piece of creative writing, but they don't adapt it at all. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna avoid all 3 of those. And this is what you're gonna do instead. You're gonna either write a hot or cold description and try and make it an extreme description, like a desert, being in the Antarctic, something really extreme, something really hot or really cold, because little top tip, it makes it a lot easier to describe if it's something extreme. You could also do a pre-written story, completely up to you, but let me know in the comments below if that is something you want me to go through on the channel. And then what you wanna do based on either your hot or cold description or your pre-written story is you want to adapt the beginning and the end to fit the picture that you're given or the prompt you're given. Let's say, for example, the photo is like a tube and you've done a description of something really hot. So you're probably thinking, how am I going to adapt it? Because you've done it about a desert and this definitely doesn't link. So you can actually pretend that's something you want to be, or maybe it was a past memory. And what you want to do is you want to insert the description in the beginning and in the end of your pre-written description or story. And that way, it's a nice way you can link it all together. On the Lightup Hub, we've got a 40-minute long video of how to adapt any piece of creative writing. And of course, we show you how to write one up. We give you some creative writing vocabs, examples for you to look at. It's all on the Lightup Hub if you wanted that. Just make sure that you slightly adapt it to the photo. The second mistake. If you want to guarantee that you get 0 on question 3 on language paper 1, don't comment on structure. Obviously, nobody wants to get 0, but question 3 is a structure question, so you have to comment on structural features. Now, what are structural features? Things like sentence length, paragraph length, shifts in focus. They are structural features that you have to comment on, and do not comment on language. So no imagery, connotation, nothing. Just structure. So if you do want to get 0 on this question, then just talk about language the whole time, which some students like to do. They just, they do some lovely analysis for language. They don't talk about structure at all. That's a good way to guarantee you get 0. So here is what not to do. The writer creates an image of. The mistake here is you can't talk about language techniques. No language techniques. Get them out of your head for question 3. The writer talks about the setting, then the characters. The mistake here is it's just purely descriptive. There's no analysis. It's just stating about the setting. It's not actually going into the analysis about it. The paragraph changes to talk about different places. Now this is slightly better because it is commenting on structure, how the setting's shifting, but it's identifying a shift, but with no explanation or no purpose of why that's there. Why is the writer shifting the setting? What was the purpose? What is the impact on the reader for that? That's what you want to focus on. So what you want to do instead is say something like, the writer's decision to start with an isolated setting builds a sense of suspense, which intensifies as the character appears alone in the vast landscape. So you can see here, I've commented on structure techniques, the idea of this like shift in focus or the shift in setting, and then I've said what it does. I've said it creates an impact of atmosphere. So I'm talking about the effect of why that is done. That is so important to do. And a lot of you probably don't do it as well for structure because you're not as familiar with analyzing structure, but do it in the same way you would do with language analysis. You wouldn't just say, the image shows he is sad. You would explain why, or I would hope you wouldn't do that anyway. Let me show you another example of what to do. The shift from describing a bustling city to an eerie, empty street enhances the reader's sense of unease, making the character's isolations more palpable. So again here, I've said what it enhanced. I've said the impact on the characters. I've said the impact on the reader. So again, I'm not just talking about the technique and the shift in setting, I am talking about the impact on the wider text. So characters, readers, atmosphere. So if you are struggling on how to talk about the effect of something, you can use the acronym CAR. So you can think about the impact on characters, think about the impact on atmosphere, and think about the impact on the reader. Don't just tell me what the setting does or the sentence length does, tell me how it impacts characters, atmosphere, and the reader. And here are some sentence starters to help you do that. By starting with insert, the writer establishes ... The shift from insert to insert creates a feeling of ... The structure here serves to ... And remember, link it to CAR, character, atmosphere, reader. And number 3 mistake, one of the biggest reasons students can't get top marks in English language is because their analysis is not in depth enough. So here's what not to do in terms of analysing. The writer uses a simile when they describe the sky as a blanket of clouds. This makes it look cozy. What has been done well here, it says what the impact is. So it says it makes it look cozy, but the mistake is it's not developed enough. We haven't said why and analysed the impact of the simile. So remember, if we're struggling to find the impact, we can use the acronym CAR. How does it impact the characters? How does it impact the atmosphere? How does it impact the reader? And another top tip, if you're struggling with really expanding of why something is cozy or why it shows that thing, try use the word as or because after the sentence, and that will help you explain. So for example, in that last one, if I said, this makes it look cozy, if I put because at the end of the sentence, it forces me to explain why. This makes it seem cozy because there's a sense of comfort and ease throughout the text as the characters get to know each other. That is explaining why. Let's look at another example of what not to do. The metaphor fire shows the character is angry. Not great again. Okay, we've said what it shows, but tell me why. So remember, let's use CAR and also let's use as or because. CAR, character, atmosphere, reader, link it to that, and then use as or because at the end of the sentence to help you explain. Now, let's focus on what to do. So how to make sure your analysis is really in depth. So let's look at that simile one and let's change the example. The simile, a blanket of clouds, conveys comfort, suggesting that the sky creates a sense of protection and warmth for the character. You can see there, I've actually explained it and I've linked it to the character. So I've linked it to my C in CAR. Now let's look at the second example of what to do for the metaphor one. The metaphor fire reflects the character's intense, consuming anger, implying it's uncontrollable and dangerous. Okay, let's look at the fire one and how we change it. This is because the character has an intensified anger and bitterness towards his mother and the extreme changes in the family. So you can see there, I've said what it shows, I've linked it to character, and I've also explained why. Here are some sentence starters you can use to make sure you avoid being vague in your analysis. The word/phrase suggests, the writer's use of insert here implies, the choice of language reflects ... Remember, always tell me why, not what. And why, use as or because to help you. Now to mistake number 4. If you avoid doing this mistake on your question 4 in language paper 1, I promise you your mark will increase. Avoid being neutral. And what I mean by being neutral is not being critical. Be critical for this question. Tell me your opinion. Be very strongly for your opinion. State your opinion very strongly. Tell me, what has the writer done well and why do you think that? Don't just tell me the writer's done okay, they've done a good job, they've done this, but they've also done this. Tell me specifically what they have done well. And has it been effective? Has it been ineffective? And typically for this question, we tend to agree with question 4s. So you agree that the writer is effectively, successfully doing something, and that is how you get the top marks in this question. So here's an example of what to avoid. I think the writer did a good job. It was very suspenseful. This is too vague. It's too personal as well, saying, I think the writer did a good job. You need to be a bit more like from a third person perspective. And also here, there's no evidence to support that. Why do you think the writers did a good job? What do you think they did a good job about? Remember guys as well, pretend the examiner is an idiot. Pretend they know nothing. Assume they've never read the extract and you're explaining to them exactly what was done well and giving them the example of where that was done well. Another example of what not to do, I agree that it's exciting. It's good. Oh, boring. So boring. Don't know what you're talking about and not very clear. What's exciting? Christmas Day? I don't know. Be specific. So, okay, we've gone through what isn't so good. Let's go through what is good. So this is what to do. So let's take our first example and let's rewrite it into what would get us full marks. The writer effectively builds suspense by using short, abrupt sentences, which mirror the character's fear and makes the reader feel as though they're experiencing the danger firsthand. So you can see here, I've not said, I think that, I've just said the writer effectively. That is my evaluative word. So think about, you need to be evaluating, they have effectively done that. And also what's good about this is I've given an example. I've said these short and abrupt sentences. So I've said they've effectively done something, which is my evaluative word, and then I've said the short, abrupt sentences. That's my example. And then I've gone on to explain why. So I've used again my car, character, attitude, reader, and I've actually talked about the impact on the character when I said about the character's fear. And then I've also linked it to the R, which is reader, when I said it makes the reader feel. That is a perfect example of up-leveling it, being evaluative, and also still explaining why. So let's look at the second example, redone and up-leveled. So instead of the I agree that, the boring one. We could say, the use of detailed imagery, like shadows clawing at the walls, successfully heightens the atmosphere of suspense, making the reader feel trapped alongside the character. So again, I've said an evaluative word, successfully, I've given an example, the detailed imagery, and then I've also explained why. So here are some sentence starters that you can use. The writer successfully creates a sense of, through the use of insert, the writer enhances, this approach engages the reader by, and then mistake number 5. One of the easiest ways to guarantee that you will run out of time on your creative writing is to do it last. Now I know this is controversial. Everyone says, don't do it first. Why wouldn't you do it first? It is worth 50% of the whole paper. So if there's any question you don't want to run out of time on, it is question 5, it is your creative writing. And I'm actually quite against the opinion, and some people will say, oh, well, students get inspiration from reading the text before. I don't think in the exam, from working with so many of you who are doing this from so many years, you get that much inspiration from reading the text. So do the question first. Do it first, get it out of the way, so that if you need to rush any questions, you can rush number 1 and number 2, not questions 5, 4, and 3. Because the most marks are in the back, then question 4, then question 3. So you want to do it in reverse order. Because if you've got 2 minutes left in your exam, you can quickly do question 1. You can't quickly do question 5. So if you like this video, guys, a bit more of an in-depth things to avoid, make sure you subscribe. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to link a video just here to help you further with your English language revision.